Steve Harvey had been hosting Family Feud for over 18 years, and throughout that extensive career in television, he had witnessed countless moments that revealed the true character of the people who appeared on his stage. He had seen individuals rise to challenges they had doubted they could meet, families discover strengths they had not known they possessed, and contestants find their voices in ways that would have seemed impossible before the cameras began rolling. However, he had also developed a keen awareness that sometimes the most profound transformations occurred not through victory or achievement, but through the process of being seen, heard, and validated by others after years of being diminished or overlooked. What transpired on that winter afternoon in January 2025 would exemplify this phenomenon in ways that would demonstrate how a single experience of genuine recognition could catalyze personal transformation that extended far beyond the confines of a game show stage. Before examining this significant moment in detail, if you appreciate content that celebrates personal growth and the journey toward self-confidence and empowerment, please take a moment to engage with this material by liking and subscribing to our channel. We share narratives that illuminate the transformative power of being truly seen and valued, and that remind us how much difference genuine encouragement can make in helping people recognize their own strength and capability. The Harrison family from Charlotte, North Carolina stood ready to compete against the Thompson family from Portland, Oregon. The Harrison family consisted of 50-year-old Alan Harrison, his wife Jennifer, who was 48, their adult daughter Emma, who was 24, Alan's sister Rebecca, and Jennifer's brother Michael. From the opening moments of their introduction, Jennifer's demeanor suggested someone who had learned to make herself small and unobtrusive, to defer to others, and to minimize her own presence in group settings. She stood slightly behind the other family members rather than in line with them, her posture conveying uncertainty about whether she truly belonged in the spotlight or deserved to occupy space on the stage. During the pre-game introductions, where Steve typically engaged in light-hearted conversation with contestants to help audiences connect with the families, Jennifer consistently deflected questions away from herself and toward other family members. When Steve asked about her work as an elementary school librarian, she described it as nothing special and quickly redirected attention to her daughter Emma's more impressive career in graphic design. When Steve inquired about her hobbies or interests, Jennifer struggled to name anything, eventually offering tentatively that she enjoyed reading, but immediately qualifying that it was not particularly interesting or noteworthy. Her husband Alan and the other family members did not actively diminish Jennifer's responses, but they also did not contradict her self-deprecating characterizations or encourage her to speak more confidently about herself and her accomplishments. The game began with these dynamics already established, and Jennifer's initial participation reflected the low expectations she appeared to hold for her own performance. When it was her turn to answer questions, she frequently prefaced her responses with apologies or disclaimers about how she was probably wrong. When she provided answers that were not on the board, she apologized profusely not just to her family, but to Steve and the audience, as though her incorrect game show answers represented genuine failures that warranted remorse and embarrassment. Her body language throughout these early rounds communicated discomfort with being the center of attention and eagerness to fade back into the background as quickly as possible. However, as the game progressed, something interesting began to happen. Jennifer, despite her obvious lack of confidence and her tendency to apologize for her own existence, was actually providing strong answers with impressive frequency. Her instincts about what responses would appear on the surveys were remarkably accurate, and her strategic thinking about when to play versus when to pass demonstrated genuine game sense that belied her apologetic presentation. Steve noticed this pattern and began explicitly acknowledging Jennifer's contributions, praising her good answers and her strategic decisions with genuine enthusiasm that seemed to surprise her. The first visible shift in Jennifer's demeanor occurred during a round where she won a face-off and provided the number one answer. Steve celebrated her success with characteristic energy, and the studio audience responded with enthusiastic applause. Jennifer's automatic response was to deflect credit by saying she had gotten lucky, But Steve stopped her mid-sentence and told her directly that luck had nothing to do with it. He explained that she had beaten her opponent to the buzzer through quick thinking, had provided an excellent answer through good instincts, and deserved to own her success rather than minimize it. He asked her why she was so determined to give away credit for things she had actually accomplished through her own capability. Jennifer stood at the center podium, clearly struggling with how to respond to Steve's question and his refusal to accept her self-deprecation. After a long pause, she said quietly that she was not used to people noticing when she did things right, that she had learned over many years to expect criticism when she made mistakes, but not to expect recognition when she succeeded. She said that deflecting praise and minimizing her accomplishments had become automatic, a way of avoiding seeming proud or drawing attention to herself in ways that might invite resentment or pushback from others. Steve's expression shifted to visible concern and sadness as he absorbed what Jennifer had revealed. He told her that what she had just described was deeply troubling because it suggested she had spent years in environments where her contributions were taken for granted and where she had been conditioned to believe that her successes were unremarkable while her failures were significant. He said that from what he had observed during the game, she was intelligent, strategic, and capable, and that the disconnect between her actual abilities and her profound lack of confidence suggested that people in her life had failed to reflect back to her the truth of her competence and value. The moment marked a turning point in how Jennifer engaged with the remainder of the game. She began answering questions with slightly less apology and slightly more directness, her posture gradually straightening as the game continued. When she provided correct answers in subsequent rounds, Steve made a point of celebrating them and of insisting that Jennifer acknowledge her own success rather than attributing it to luck or chance. The studio audience, sensing that something significant was occurring beyond the typical game show competition, began cheering more enthusiastically for Jennifer, specifically offering encouragement and validation that visibly affected her confidence and presence. Jennifer's daughter Emma, watching her mother's gradual transformation, approached Steve during a break in filming and shared information that provided context for what everyone had been witnessing. She explained that her mother had always been the person in the family who took care of everyone else's needs while neglecting her own, who celebrated everyone else's achievements while dismissing her own, and who had absorbed years of subtle messages that her role was to support others rather than to shine in her own right. Emma said that watching her mother finally receive recognition and encouragement from someone outside the family had been emotional because it highlighted how rarely Jennifer received such affirmation at home. Emma's revelation prompted Steve to pay even closer attention to Jennifer's interactions with her husband Alan and the other family members. He noticed that when Jennifer made suggestions about strategy, Alan often ignored them or overruled them without discussion. He observed that when Jennifer celebrated small victories, the family's response was muted compared to their enthusiastic support when other members succeeded. He recognized patterns that suggested Jennifer had indeed been relegated to a supporting role in her own family, valued for her contributions to others' well-being, but not acknowledged or celebrated as an individual with her own talents and achievements worthy of recognition. When the Harrison family advanced to fast money after winning the main game, Steve made a deliberate decision about how to structure the final round. Typically, the two family members who played fast money were chosen based on who had performed best during the game or based on strategic considerations about who might excel under the pressure of the rapid-fire questioning. However, Steve announced that he wanted Jennifer to play fast money because he believed she had the capability to contribute significantly to the family's success, and because he wanted to create an opportunity for her to demonstrate her abilities in a context that would make her contributions undeniable and impossible to minimize. Jennifer appeared anxious about this spotlight and attempted to suggest that someone else might be a better choice, but Steve was insistent and supportive. He told her that he had watched her throughout the game and had complete confidence in her abilities, that she had earned this opportunity through her performance, and that he believed she would do excellently if she trusted herself the way he trusted her. The encouragement from Steve, combined with the supportive cheering from the audience, seemed to bolster Jennifer's confidence, and she agreed to participate in Fast Money with visible determination to meet Steve's faith in her capabilities. Jennifer played first in the Fast Money round, and her performance was impressive. She answered the 5 questions with speed and accuracy, demonstrating sharp thinking and good survey instincts that accumulated a strong point total. When her answers were revealed, and the board showed that she had scored well above the average for a first Fast Money player, the studio erupted in celebration. Steve made a point of telling Jennifer that she had just proved what he had been saying throughout the game, that she was capable and talented, and deserved to recognize and celebrate her own abilities. The second family member played and added enough points to the total for the Harrison family to win the grand prize. However, the monetary victory seemed almost secondary to what had occurred for Jennifer personally during the course of the game. As the family celebrated their win, Jennifer stood taller than she had at any point during the episode, her expression reflecting something that looked like surprised recognition of her own competence. Steve approached her specifically during the celebration and told her that she needed to remember how she felt in that moment, that she needed to hold on to the knowledge that she was capable of more than she had been allowing herself to believe. He spoke to her about the importance of demanding recognition and respect from the people in her life, about refusing to minimize her own accomplishments or to accept being treated as though her contributions were less valuable than others' contributions. He told her that watching her transformation over the course of the game had been one of the most rewarding experiences of his hosting career, because it demonstrated what could happen when someone who had been taught to doubt themselves finally received clear reflection that their doubts were unfounded and that they possessed genuine capability and worth. After filming concluded, Steve spent additional time speaking with Jennifer and her family off camera. He addressed Alan directly about the patterns he had observed during the game, explaining that while Alan had not been overtly cruel or dismissive, his consistent failure to acknowledge Jennifer's contributions and his tendency to overrule her suggestions without discussion both reflected and reinforced her lack of confidence. He encouraged Alan to examine how he treated his wife and to consider whether his behavior supported her growth and confidence or subtly undermined them. Steve also spoke with Emma about her role in supporting her mother's transformation beyond the game show experience. He emphasized that Jennifer would need ongoing encouragement and validation to maintain the confidence she had begun to develop during their Family Feud appearance, and that returning to environments where her capabilities were taken for granted would quickly erode the progress she had made. He suggested that Emma and other family members consciously work to recognize Jennifer's contributions, to seek and value her input, and to celebrate her successes in ways that would reinforce the truth that she was competent and valuable. When the episode aired 4 months later, viewers immediately responded to Jennifer's visible transformation from apologetic self-doubt to emerging confidence. Thousands of people, predominantly women, reached out through social media to share that they had recognized themselves in Jennifer's initial presentation, that they too had learned to minimize their accomplishments and to doubt their own capabilities, despite evidence of competence. Many specifically referenced how powerful it had been to watch someone like Steve Harvey explicitly refuse to accept Jennifer's self-deprecation and insist that she acknowledge her own success and ability. The episode sparked important conversations about how women in particular were often socialized to be modest to the point of self-erasure, to deflect recognition, and to prioritize supporting others over developing and celebrating their own talents. Viewers discussed the various ways that families and workplaces created environments where some people's contributions were noticed and celebrated while others' equally valuable contributions were taken for granted or attributed to luck rather than skill. The visible impact that genuine recognition and encouragement had on Jennifer's confidence highlighted how much difference it made when people received accurate reflection of their capabilities rather than subtle messages that they should remain small and unobtrusive. Jennifer herself shared several months after the episode aired that the experience of being on Family Feud had indeed been transformative in ways that extended well beyond the game itself. She described how Steve's insistence that she own her successes and his explicit naming of her capabilities had broken through decades of conditioning that had taught her to doubt herself and to defer to others. She said that having a studio audience cheer for her specifically and having her performance quantified in ways that made her contributions undeniable had given her concrete evidence to counter the internal voice that told her she was not particularly capable or valuable. She reported that the changes in her life since the taping had been significant and ongoing. She had begun speaking up more consistently in family discussions and had been surprised to find that her input was often valuable and appreciated when she actually voiced it rather than keeping her thoughts to herself. She had pursued a leadership role at her library that she previously would have assumed she was not qualified for, and had discovered that she was indeed capable of handling the additional responsibilities and authority. She had started saying no to requests from family members when those requests would have required her to sacrifice her own well-being or priorities, recognizing that supporting others did not require erasing herself. Most importantly, Jennifer said she had developed an internal sense of her own worth that was less dependent on external validation than it had been before. While she still appreciated recognition and encouragement from others, she no longer required it to believe in her own capabilities. The experience of being seen clearly and having her competence reflected back to her accurately had created a foundation of self-knowledge that she could draw on even when external circumstances did not provide ongoing validation. Allen reported in follow-up conversations that watching the episode and hearing Steve's observations about his treatment of Jennifer had been uncomfortable but necessary. He acknowledged that he had not realized how consistently he had failed to recognize his wife's contributions or how his casual dismissal of her suggestions had reinforced her lack of confidence. He said that he had believed he was being a good husband by not criticizing Jennifer, but had not understood that absence of criticism was not the same as presence of affirmation, and that taking someone's contributions for granted was its own form of diminishment. He committed to being more conscious about acknowledging Jennifer's capabilities and seeking her input in decisions. The story of the wife who walked off stronger than she came became a cultural reference point in discussions about confidence, the impact of recognition versus neglect, and the importance of creating environments where people's contributions were noticed and celebrated rather than taken for granted. The visible transformation in Jennifer's posture, expression, and self-presentation over the course of a single game show episode provided powerful visual evidence of how quickly confidence could grow when people received accurate reflection of their actual capabilities. Steve Harvey continued to speak about Jennifer's story in interviews and public appearances, describing it as a reminder that his role as host extended beyond facilitating entertainment to include recognizing and validating the people who appeared on his stage. He emphasized that while he could not change Jennifer's entire life or undo years of conditioning in a single afternoon, he could create a moment of clarity where she experienced what it felt like to be truly seen and celebrated, and that moment could serve as a reference point she could return to when doubt crept back in. The incident prompted reflection more broadly about how families, workplaces, and communities could better recognize and celebrate the contributions of people who tended toward modesty or who had learned to minimize their own accomplishments. Viewers discussed the importance of explicitly naming people's successes, of refusing to accept self-deprecation when it was unwarranted, and of creating cultures where everyone's capabilities were acknowledged rather than only the most self-promoting individuals receiving recognition. If this examination of personal transformation and the power of genuine recognition has provided meaningful perspective, please support our channel by engaging with this content through likes and subscriptions. Share this story with others who might benefit from understanding how much difference it makes to have our capabilities truly seen and celebrated, or who might need encouragement to recognize and own their own competence and worth. Consider the people in your life who may be quietly contributing without receiving adequate recognition, and make the conscious choice to notice and celebrate their capabilities explicitly. In families and communities where some voices are naturally louder and some personalities naturally more commanding, we must work deliberately to ensure that quieter competence receives the acknowledgement it deserves. Jennifer's transformation from apologetic self-doubt to emerging confidence remains a testament to what becomes possible when we finally receive accurate reflection of our actual capabilities, and when we choose to believe that reflection rather than the voices that taught us to remain small.